Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Now, should you buy, rent, or build? I know that's one of the biggest dilemma of most young executives out there, and even Ghanaians, in terms of owning a home today. But why is it so challenging for a lot of people out there when it comes to owning a home in Ghana today? How can we overcome the challenge? What are the players saying? What is government also doing? Well, all these things wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition to try to get some solutions and options available to people out there. This is Business Edition, PM Express. We'll be right back after this break. Well, welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we try and find some solutions, or what are the options available to people out there in terms of owning a home in Ghana here today. Why is this so difficult? What is the problem? Going forward, are we going to ensure that it becomes easier for you and I to own a home today? We'll be engaging the players in the industry when it comes to home ownership in Ghana here today. The Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, and also some players in the banking industry. And you can't talk about this without engaging government. What is government doing? It appears the finance ministry is doing something interesting or leading something when it comes to us getting affordable homes here in the country. Well, Samson Agliko, he is the acting director of the Financial Sector Division at the Ministry of Finance. Samson, thank you for joining us on PM Express Business Edition.
Thank you.
And how are you doing, by the way?
Yeah, I'm good. I feel like, maybe some 3 years of coming back to the studio and getting engaged, but
I'm always a friend of multimedia, and I hope that you're still a friend. But you are the Financial Sector Division, right, at the Ministry of Finance. What do you guys do there in terms of when it comes to this whole Financial Sector Division?
Yeah, so actually, the ministry has a division called the Financial Sector Division that is so critical in ensuring that, the financial system is looked at holistically, especially in terms of market development. And then also we support the Minister for Finance, who is the sector minister for that area, in passing a lot of legislations that will enable us to to push the sector forward. So it's quite a very important, one of the key important divisions in the ministry.
So Samia Amaigbo is with the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association as well. And I before I come to you to get some understanding why, will I say all of a sudden, the Finance Ministry is interested in when it comes to home ownership here in Ghana, what government is doing. I want to get some first understanding from the Ghana Real Estate Association in terms of the situation on the ground right now, before I come to you and to get some understanding from what is the Ministry of Finance doing to help me and even our viewers out there to own a home. Samia Megaibo is the Executive Director of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. Sami, thank you so much for joining us from your home, and it's good to have you on PM Express Business Edition. I mean, help me out. What is the situation right now as we talk or as we speak in terms of the real estate industry and then home ownership? Well, let's first get some understanding. What is the situation right now?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity, and a very good evening to your viewers. As you may be aware, the jargon word, or the most used word when it comes to real estate industry, has been deficit. And it is a general notion that our deficit is getting worse and worse. And that is actually the fact. 2010, thereabout, I think the Habitat for Humanity and then the Ghana Statistical Service had both done some statistics at that time, and then came up with a figure that our deficit was running around 1.7 million. And so between then and now, if you look at our demand and what we can supply, I mean, there's a big discrepancy. There's a big shortfall in the supply aspect of it. And so we have accumulated deficit all this while, and as of last year, we began to do some extrapolation and realized that we should be hitting around 2 million by now. And so we have gone beyond 2 million as we speak. And so the housing deficit itself I think it has been widening. But players in the industry, especially like greater members, are doing their best. I mean, the circumstance hasn't been that conducive for us, but business must be continued. So we are doing our best under the circumstance to continue to supply some housing onto the market. But as you may be aware, most people are complaining about affordability, and so that is where we need to work as a team to. And
Samir, and that's where I want to, and that's where I want to come in, because when you talk about housing deficit, is it because of the categorization? Because I've seen lots of buildings at East Legon cantonments that have still not been occupied. So is it about the fact that maybe when it comes to affordable housing, there's a deficit, but when it comes to middle income housing, there isn't a deficit? Because I see a lot of them around that they are quite empty. So why the deficit?
Yes, I think you said it all. We are doing very well in the middle class to the upper market. We have been able to supply more than enough. I wouldn't say it has gluttoned, but we have provided adequate housing. That is why you see at that level so many houses either unrented or unoccupied. But the deficit that we have been talking about is in the medium to low income. In fact, most especially the low income, that is where we are not doing too well. And then, as you are also aware, in Ghana, we actually don't have any social housing project that is going on. And that bracket is completely untapped. And we don't know about any initiative that exists for social housing at this moment. But it is something that we have to do something about. Because if you look at our population, we have a group. There was a statistics by a Nigerian professor who we had a meeting with some time ago, and he said that we have about 13% of the population that has purchasing power, over 60% of the population that can rent, but the other group cannot neither buy nor rent, and so they belong to the social class, and so the social group that needs some kind of intervention to make it possible for them to have accommodation. Unfortunately, we don't have any initiatives at this moment to deal with that particular aspect. And we are also struggling to actually deliver affordable housing because of certain reasons, which I'm sure by the discussions we'll be able to look into some of those details.
Mr. Maigbo, it's good that you talked about struggling to provide the houses, and it'll be a good time to bring in another player in this whole discussion, the banks. Faridam Anta, he is the managing director of Republic Bank. And I believe that most of the players here are talking about financing, affordable housing. What role are you playing? What are you doing? I mean, in terms of helping and bridging this gap?
Good evening, and thanks for having me here. Thank you, George, other panelists, and to your viewers. The question is the role of the bank, or the banks. Well, the banks play a critical role in facilitating the home ownership. You indicated or you mentioned in your opening remarks about the desire of each Ghanaian to own their own home, their own bed. And I think that's a global phenomenon. But every country, depending on their development status, will have different challenges. From what we see in Ghana, we are one of the oldest and first providers of residential mortgages in the local market. And we have seen it transition over time. As you were indicating there with the upper middle and upper income, it's very well served. And I think there are 3 or 4 fundamental reasons why investments may be going in certain areas. Of course, the margins, higher price properties, the margins are much better. Some of these buyers are able to borrow in US dollars because they're overseas, they are non-resident Ghanaians, etc. So they have an advantage in terms of the price. Generally, I think it's, again, a global challenge for all governments for providing or making it possible for the lower middle, and low income persons to own a home. So we have been doing our part. I mean, we are, by number, we are by far the largest lender for residential mortgages in Ghana. And we focus a lot on trying to make the small man get his own bed, as you would say. The margins there in that market are very small. So there are several challenges. Of course, the cost of borrowing without any subsidy or assistance from the government or multilateral agencies, the funding for the developer is a very high cost. So when you put that into the cost of the construction, it's a challenge to come in under the 120, 150,000 Ghana cedis level. The land ownership and the land tenure for us as financiers in particular is a challenge. We have to be very careful and mindful of which developer we work with, the credibility, and not only that, you have some of the developers who genuinely believe they have good title to a parcel of land or parcels of land, and you go down the road, we may have financed a mortgage, we may have gone through, people may have moved in, but the land is sold a second and a third time. There needs to be some structuring. I know I'm seeing of late that the digitization of some of the records in the Land Commission, which is an excellent first step, and I think it's starting very soon, the 9th of November. That's a good first step. And it needs to be across all the entities where you have to deal with land title. That is the Land Title Registry, the Lands Commission, the survey, evaluations, because things get caught and stuck everywhere. So it makes it, in some cases, not as attractive to a lender. So we have the developer with the challenges, with the costs, as well as the land title, the finances with the land title, and the quality of the development. And the third element would, of course, be the affordability for the purchaser. And at 24 to 28%, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, for the common man to be able to own a property. Now, in most markets where we operate, we would give 30 and 40-year mortgages.
Okay.
When I came, I said, why don't we extend the term?
Mr. Hunter, I think it might be a good time to let you hold on there. Let me bring in a big player when it talks to government in terms of what government is doing to address all these problems. It looks like the real estate developers have raised their concerns. Those who play the financial role or the financing role also raised their concerns. Something like Liko Ezra, there's the acting director of the financial sector division of the Ministry of Finance, and they're also doing something in this bit. Something, I mean, having heard all the concerns of these players, the estate developers and the bankers, I get worried. It looks like home ownership, affordable housing, maybe a mirage. It would never happen.
No, Judge. I mean, quite frankly, affordable housing cannot be a mirage. I think that is something that is so fundamental to getting every economy to work. I mean, as you listen to both Greta and you listen to the banks, what you are saying is essentially a market failure. You know, and I think when you started the conversation, you asked me, like, okay, what is Ministry of Finance doing? And I think I was also surprised that maybe you are thinking this is the first
Ministry
time.
of Works and Housing. Yes, I was thinking to be leading this thing.
This is the first time that, and I think one of the reasons why I'm here is because I think it's important for us to have this conversation in a very important context. Anytime you talk about housing, you see, when you listen to Greta and you listen to the banks, there are two sides to the housing equation. You know, you have to be able to create market. Anytime you mention a housing deficit, it is very clear. It is true that there's a housing deficit, but there's a supply side equation to this, and then there's a demand side equation to this. Fundamentally, when you build the houses, there must be, you know, maybe a market that will be able to get these homes, and you must be able to create that ecosystem for it to happen. So yes, this effort that has been done is not sincerely a Ministry of Finance effort, it's a government effort. Okay. And this effort is between the Ministry of Finance, importantly on the demand side, and the Ministry of Works and Housing on the supply side. And for the first time, we are trying to do it in such a way that, look, we create a more viable and effective market in the residential construction space. And I'm sure our conversations will lead to that. I think the last thing I would also say is that this is not the first time, sincerely speaking, both the Ministry of Finance is doing that. One of the things that surprised me was that the Ministry of Finance has been engaging, especially on the mortgage and rate space, for a very long time. And one of the reasons why HFC was actually promoted was for this reason. And in 2007, the then government actually even signed an agreement with HFC at that time to support affordable mortgages to the Ghanaian people.
But so I want to find out from you, what is government doing right now? We've heard a lot of things about affordable housing, but it's still a challenge. What is government doing right now to address all these problems? There's a land issue. The greater guys are talking about financing. The banks are saying, listen, we want to finance, but these are the challenges. What is government doing right now to address all these problems so that a Kojo mentor, a young graduate out there taking in some good money, can go out there, work out with these banks, and get a home? What are you doing now?
I think this will present me the opportunity to go a bit into the initiative that the president launched on Monday. So what we have done over the past 2 years is to try to find a way to reset the affordable housing ecosystem and to tackle these issues in a more comprehensive way. And so I think in 2008, the government approved a national mortgage and housing initiative, and that actually sought to intervene, especially on the demand side. And so what we have done over the years is that we set up a national housing and mortgage fund, which was intended to tackle predominantly the demand side, which I will go into the details. And then at the same time, we set up a national housing committee under the Ministry of Works and Housing that was supposed to start tackling some of the issues on the supply side. And actually the results of that pilot, which actually was lessons from some of the successes in the past, has been very phenomenal. And I think that we can go into this.
So, I mean, some will say that after all said and done, we have this committee, that committee here, and all the rest. We've had instances where there have been affordable housing program, and for those who have even gotten the houses themselves, are not people who are low-income earners, and they are taking these houses and reselling them and all the rest.
George,
what is government doing now to address some of these problems?
I think, for me, I want to be very practical. I think if we take the conversation in a contest as to face the problem. You see, the truth is that as a country, I said it, if it's a market failure, I don't want to talk about maybe some of
break it down issues for a lot of my viewers to appreciate
the problem we have is that you have a situation where you have majority of your people earning a particular income. You have a situation where if you want to buy a home, certainly you need money. The market system that you have to get that money, which is well established, is a mortgage system or maybe a rental system or one form of those systems that must be created. If you look at, for example, our mortgage market over the past 2 decades, looking at the size of this economy, we have been told that only 6,000 or even maximum of 7,000 mortgages have been written. We are also being told that out of this mortgage that is being written, majority, over 80% of them are in dollars. You understand? You see, let's not believe. It's important for us to know the only way that people can own homes is when the people can afford it. And how the people afford it, there must be a demand system that is created and that is effective. And I even think that is market-based. You see, so it is just so important, and that must work, for example, with the supply side. And I'll give you a practical example. You see, the last time when the a housing program was being done, there was a lot of comment and people saying, hey, in Ghana today, when you ask people, do you want to come and do housing? They will say, yeah, okay, we want to come and do housing, investors. When they bring the money, the first thing they'll be looking for is offtake, which you'll be amazed they will not get. The manifestation of that is that maybe they will come to government and say, oh, please give me a sovereign guarantee. So the reality is that once we have a housing deficit, where majority of our people need houses, the ecosystem for them to be able to own those houses, is something that really is not effective, and we have to take our time and construct it. And it is also true that there's also a problem on the supply side, which of course the Ministry of Works and Housing too is working to address. And I think that in the past 2 years, a successful relationship between the Ministry of Works and Housing and the Ministry of Finance has delivered, like in fact the model community in Tema, which the president launched. Those houses, the dynamics of what has done is very impressive looking at our market condition. It is through the same ecosystem that today they are reviving the TDC Community 22 project through a rent-to-own scheme. If you go there today, you see nurses and teachers staying there. The offtake system through REITs has also given them about 60 units of houses being bought within a very short period from Adon, which is a private developer. But the pilot was done because it is important to sit back and try to get a more comprehensive understanding of what is happening and patiently try to fix that market problem. There are other direct ways of doing it. I mean, I quite remember in one of my engagements with the CSOs, I didn't have permission, so I will not mention the name. I was surprised when he told me that when he was young, TDC was doing social housing. The parents were working in Tema and everything. They went to TDC. They rented. They just gave them a house to pay rent, and after some time, you know, the parents bought a house from TDC at an equitable value. When he told me that with a lot of passion, the first thing that struck me was that as a country, we have made serious attempts at home ownership before. What we have failed to do is that we have not been able to sustain it. And we have not been able to sustain it because we have not created a very effective market, both on the demand side and the supply side, for those things to be sustainable. And I think that this conversation really, if we take away the basics and the things that will distract us, you'll get to know that we have a fundamental problem that we have to work seriously to fix.
No, I'll be coming back. You made a very critical point about salaries here and even about that. And I'll look at what is government also going to do in that line as well. And also, with respect to this whole national mortgage housing scheme thing, how does it address the option of whether I need to buy, I need to rent, I need to build as well? And I'll also be joining my guest via Zoom also very soon to also get some deeper understanding of looking at all these options. How do they come in and fix and address all these problems? We'll take a short break on the right back as you look at owning home in Ghana today. What are the options available? I have with me Managing Director of Republic Bank and also the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about home ownership here in Ghana. Why is it so much of a big challenge? How do we get around this issue? What role is government playing? What about the real estate developers and even the banks themselves? And here we have with me here in the studio Samson Akliko. He is Acting Director of the Financial Sector Division of the Ministry of Finance. And they, together with the Ministry of Works and Housing, they are leading a whole project to try and see how they can help reduce the prices of housing, or what they call the affordable housing scheme in this whole country, and maybe more of a government playing some social intervention role, if I can use that, to ensure that you and I, everyone out there, can own a home. What about the real estate developers? What is their big problem? And also the banks, are they our biggest problem, or they can do better? Let me go right on to the Zoom and also engage Mr. Samir Megbo. He is with the Real Estate Developers Association. Now, Samir, help me out. So what are the options available to someone like me? Would you want me to build myself so you don't have a job? Do you want me to go out there and rent? Or you want me to do more of a mortgage? I'll come to the bank later. In terms of the real estate developers, what are the options available for those who want to go into the affordable housing scheme? What do you have for me? Do I build? Do I rent? Or do I buy?
Fact, I have always said that if you went for mortgage, it's a better option than to try and do any piecemeal attempt on your own. The reason being that if you take a mortgage, you benefit from the property immediately after the process has been done with the bank. And then you take possession of the property and enjoy it over your lifetime. But if you attempt to do piecemeal development on your own, the reality is that you don't have the funding. And so you are only building as and when you get some income. And sometimes it might be difficult for you to even determine how long it's going to take you. And so you end up building for 20 years and 25 years. And then before you say that, either you are half done with the project, and then you are either heading for retirement or something you may probably not have completed. So in actual fact, mortgage for me is the best option. It's one of the best ways for everybody to own a property, because you take possession immediately, and all you have to do is to find yourself a sustainable job to be able to rake in something at the end of every month and then pay the mortgage funder. The only problem we have had over the years has been the cost of the mortgage. That Mr. Anta will bear with us, that the interest rate is becoming a monster for many people. And so a lot of people view that option as if it is almost unbearable to bear. But I don't think so. We have something we can do to bring the rate down. And so that intervention from the government side, which has been, come to dilute the interest rate, I think you know how that system works. The government gave you, any bank, 10 million Ghana cedis. You are supposed to also add 10 million Ghana cedis so that the interest rate is diluted. That is why a Republic Bank today can give something to the public for about 12% instead of the usual 24% and beyond. It's because there's that intervention from government. So that intervention is fine. But we have to find out whether this intervention by themselves are sufficient enough to run. Because as you are giving incentives in the mortgage area, there has to be something to at the supply side, which is the construction finance. I'm not too sure how much we have done with that. So a lot of developers are struggling to get cheaper finance to build their houses. Apart from the cost of the interest rate itself, then they have a problem with non-existence of long-term financing. And so within a year or two, the bank is on your neck for you to pay back. And our products are not like milk and Milo that you can produce overnight. It takes a long time. It can take 2 years or 4 years to actually hatch a project and hand over. So when you don't have a system where you have access to long financing with adequate moratorium to give you, the developers, some breathing space to organize yourself, get the project through, and get some breathing space to actually launch a finished project and start selling and recycle the investment, then you really have a challenge. Mr. Anta made mention of some of our problems and brought the issue of mortgage. So there is no much investment in the mortgage market now because our penetration is very low, the challenges are high, people's earnings are so low, and it's becoming difficult. So to augment that problem, GRIDA has proposed that a lot of investment are not coming because of the challenge that they have. Today, if somebody defaults in paying a mortgage and a bank decides to take this person on, for example, it can take several years in court to even resolve the issue. So several cases are in court spanning over several years just to resolve mortgage issues, which is not attractive for investors to come. So GRIDA has proposed that let's look at the law and review it to make it possible for quicker resolution of disputes when it comes to defaults, so that it will be more attractive for investors to come. Then he also mentioned about land. The same issue about land, GRIDA has also proposed to government that, look, people are not getting safe land that are encumbrance-free. There are too many litigations here and there. So let's develop a system where landowners can comfortably register their land because of money and access to funds to register. They are unable to register. So we are suggesting that government should make it possible for landowners, especially chiefs who have access to large tracts of land, to register their land with government. Government shouldn't take money from this, will be the owners, but rather take a portion of land, a percentage of the land that they are registering, and then keep that land, give them good titles to the land, then they can transfer good titles to will-be landowners. Then the land that government gets as a percentage of the registration.
Sorry, it looks like I'm having some challenges connecting through to Mr. Ameigbo. But they've raised very critical concern, and it looks like the buck always stops with government that you may have to do a lot, even in that space of affordable housing. This is their challenge. They want to go into that space, but listen, access to capital, cheap funds, construction, taxes, it's a big challenge for them. It looks like you government has a lot of work to do, and with this, your whole national mortgage and housing financing scheme that you're pushing very, very hard.
George, I think that we have, see, I think this conversation, I'm really happy because I have seen a lot of the practical challenges with this. I see, but you see, one of the, for example, let me even take the issue since this is a conversation. The first one is that this model that we have, you see, in the, we have the
model that's in the national housing.
So the government, the government actually approved the National Mortgage and Housing Finance Initiative.
That has been passed by Parliament or what?
No, not passed, approved by Parliament.
Okay, sorry.
So to operationalize that, we set up the National Housing and Mortgage Fund as a pilot. So
that fund is in operation as we speak right now. Help with the construction.
Basis, So what we have done is that the fund actually set up two schemes. The first one is the national mortgage schemes with the banks. And in the scheme that we set up with the banks called the national mortgage schemes, the intention at the pilot phase that we had is that, look, if you're a bank and government is intervening for you to do mortgages as a subsidized or a blended rate, because the National Housing and Mortgage Fund, which is taxpayers' money, is going to these banks at like about 2%. And the banks are taking market money, which includes institutional funds, to blend that, to give us this rates, for example, average rates of 11% that we are having. The original during the pilot was that, look, if a bank is able to give a mortgage on the demand side, the bank should be able to give construction finance to the developers on the supply side. And within the framework, the agreement that we signed with the banks, in fact, we even capped that, okay, if you look at the inherent risk in mortgages and construction finance, we cap the mortgage, the mortgage at 3% above the blended rate, and then we actually cap the construction finance at above 5%. But I have learned over the past 2 years is that our banks are not willing to give construction finance, and a lot of the practical problems that I have seen has to do more with the business case for the developers. The other thing that we also realize is that as a country, we have really made significant progress in internal long-term funds. Like we have our pension funds, we have our institution insurance companies, especially the life insurance companies that are growing. And then we also have some mutual funds that can also do long-term. But the instruments that the banks and financial institutions need to have to tap those resources for the long term are not there. You'll be amazed to know that while we have pension funds, a lot of the pension funds is going to banks as short-term deposits. You see, so that's what I was trying to explain to you, that the problem that we have is really requires a bit of patience to create a market and make it to make it work effectively. And that is what we have been doing patiently for the 2 years. But even within that 2 years, we have, as I mentioned, the success has been very phenomenal. If we see what we did at 22, what we have done at 22 is even to say that, look, whilst we have this framework going with the banks, Stanbic Bank at the pilot phase, Republic Bank and GCB Bank, let's even go beyond that and form a stronger partnership with one of the state developers and see, can we build a model community that will set some affordable housing entry point, and really in terms of housing, what are some of the basic requirements that we should do? And we work with the Ministry of Works and Housing, and so this Ministry of Works and Housing has worked very hard to give some basic requirements to the demand side. And the results that we have seen is a model community with covered drainage, with tarred roads, and really even gated, and the price points for a start using traditional building has been impressive. For example, you get a 2-bedroom detached expandable at about 210,000 cities. That is the beginning.
And so what period are we looking at for someone with maybe 3,000, 4,000, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 to get into this thing?
No. In terms of the mortgage?
Yeah, in terms of the salary here.
Oh yeah, well, the upscale of the one you're mentioning is very easy to get one, because
like if
you get 7, 8, yes,
maybe 8,000 or something.
8,000, you can easily get into
Let's come to
this.
the lower.
Yeah, but when you come to so again, we thought about the lower segment of the economy, and we did a sample with the civil service salary structure, and it was very revealing. We realized that, look, even if you drop mortgage interest rates to base, the current market rate is around 24 as we speak. In 2019 it was 28. When you even intervene and break it down, it would, for the civil service, still about 70% of them will not be able to take the mortgages. That is why we came up with the other model called the rent to own. In the mortgage system, you front load down payment and pay the interest over time. In the other one, what we have done is that we have reversed it. So you have backloaded the equity interest, like what I got to know that TDC was doing in the past, but except that now we are trying to create a whole institutional framework around it. So we found, so what we have done, which is working also, is that you have a rent-to-own scheme that every Ghanaian, if now we're starting with public sector workers, but the principle is that every Ghanaian who wants to own a home can start by renting, and maybe after 15 years, then you can pay some money based on residual this thing, and then you own the house. And the high-rise buildings that we have at the TDC 26 affordable enclave is working for teachers and nurses. So now what we need to do is to really study the framework and see how we can broaden it. And if we're able to do that, especially with the price point for the houses that TDC has built, I can tell you that we can support an enormous amount of the middle segment of the population with high-rise buildings. And then the concept of first home ownership and moving on to second home ownership, all those things will become a reality.
So something trying to wrap, because we need to take a short break, and I'll connect with my friends and the panelists on Zoom as well. This national mortgage housing scheme thing, I get from you that it's going to deal with the supply side,
the demand side,
in terms of the construction as well as support.
Yes. So there is, as I said, this is a very comprehensive framework that we sought to do. One of the things, typically, if you are building for the developers, you see, like Greta was making a very strong point. In a lot of cases, you don't expect a developer to build a house and take maybe 6 months or 1 year to sell the house. And then the developer has gone to a bank to go and take a loan. The interest payment of the loan and the time that it takes to sell the house, there's a mismatch. So even if I'm advising the developer, it is not really advisable to go to do that. So that is why you see a lot of the developers crying for medium to long-term loans, funds, you see. But what you see in a lot of other countries is that when the developer builds, there is an effective offtake system for them. So you build, you don't really think somebody actually takes the ownership and then effectively do the marketing, and it's somebody's business. So what we are trying to do under this affordable rent to own, the REIT framework, is that how do you use a vehicle like the REIT to suit our context so that we can use it to provide that effective offtake for developers. And I think that this taking the pain to put this institutional framework would help us going forward than the past. Because when you do, it's like thinking about short term. You don't, over time, you don't get the benefits. Yes.
We'll take a short break and I'll connect again to my panelists via Zoom. Quickly after the break, Mr. Anta from Republic Bank, and also Samir Maigbo. He is with the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. This is PM Express Business Edition. What are the options available to you in owning a home in Ghana here today? Do you build, do you buy, do you rent? Well, the real estate man is telling me it has to be the mortgage, but I hope you also have some strong salary to go this way. Let's take a break and we'll be right back. PM Express Business Edition. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as you look at owning a home in Ghana today. What are the options available? Do you rent, do you buy, do you build? Or maybe what do you do? Stay with your parents or friends or family. Let me quickly get on to Zoom and speak to Mr. Anta. He's the Managing Director of Republic Bank. And in trying to wrap up with you as well, and also the Real Estate Executive Director as well, it appears that a lot of pressure is on you, the banks, that listen, you have to do more than what you're doing. You know, so provide them affordable financing schemes for these real estate companies and even for the young executives like me to own my house.
Well, we would love to do that, and the pressure is always on the bank. Cost of funds is a reality in Ghana. But what Samson said is a very complex matter, and there are multiple facets. And from where we sit at Republic Bank, how this program, the National Housing and Mortgage Fund program, has evolved over the last year or two, we are now starting to see the benefit of it. Of course, it was new. It was a change from the old PS Home scheme, and there were different elements. So there is the element for financing the construction at a reduced rate, which comes out of the same pool, so it cannot be long-term. But there are some mechanisms in there we are discussing with the ministry in terms of the need to have a committed approved mortgage before we can lend to the contractor. So that in itself may be a little bit of a challenge. But we have seen two developments open recently. We have been processing a number of mortgages under the program. We have some in Kumasi for other public servants. So it's a good start. There's a lot more funding that needs to come into the program. And whether it's a government-led initiative in terms of the construction side of it, there's other risks. But I think the more banks and financial institutions get involved, as we see now, GCB has entered the market. They are managing the REIT. We are the fund managers, Republic Investments, based on our long experience in the area. So we, as a market, as a sector, we should all play our role. But the funding element for the long-term mortgage, the takeout, is critical. It cannot and generally is not provided by banks on a commercial basis. In the great US of A, you have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who was set up to facilitate home ownership at reduced rates. Yeah. Over time, on the repayments, it will be self-funding. And that's where we will want to end up in the not-too-distant future. But I think we are also a good start. There are some elements that need to be fixed with the legal aspect, how the construction is managed, etc. But I think the program fundamentally is a solid.
Mr. Anta, before I let you go and I bring in, so for you as a bank and putting on the hat as a player in the banking industry, trying to get a mortgage, what minimum salary level are you looking for me to get maybe a 2-bedroom house somewhere in this country? What do you think I need to have? In just a minute, if you can explain that to me. Putting on the cap as a banker.
I hope I remember correctly. I think we are looking somewhere around the 3,000 a month range to get you into that 120 sort of price unit. We haven't seen too many units coming in at the 80 or 90,000, which is the lower end of the price range. We see them coming in more to the 120. But there's a large percentage of the public service who qualifies for it, and ideally we want to get that open to the entire Ghana public. But we have to take one step at a time.
Let me bring in Mr.
Honestly, we have quite a good pipeline of interest and approved mortgages. So the interest is there. Some of the funding is available. Okay. Now we have to manage the supplies.
Okay. Mr. Megbo, in 1 minute as I try to wrap here, for you, going forward, how do we fix this problem? In a minute.
That's tight. Well, what I would say is that, as Samson said, that we need certain instruments to make it possible for us to access certain funds, like the pension fund and the rest, to make it possible for us to access long-term financing. Okay. So that goes to buttress my point when I say that we need to slow down. You see, there are certain fundamentals with housing that if we don't get them right, we cannot progress. Okay. And we need to fix those fundamentals before we move on. Okay. The Ministry for Works and Housing doesn't have anchor institutions like the energy sector. Energy sector has TOR, it has VRA, has ECG that are supporting the ministry. The Ministry for Works and Housing doesn't have it. So everything is on the desk of the minister. And then it is not helping us.
Okay.
Time is really spare. I know you are pressed for time.
I said a minute.
I guess you need to give us a whole section, and
okay.
we'll come and give you the rundown.
Let me end it here with you, and let me bring in Mr. Sorry, time is not on our side. So let's wrap up. Going forward, are we seeing light at the end of the tunnel? A minute, please.
Yeah, George, certainly. I mean, I think the most difficult thing for us as a country is that how do we state the cost of something that is good and something that is maybe noble? I think that really has been the challenge for us. But I think the conversation that we have, and I think Greta has a strong point. They presented a strong proposition to government, and we are seeing that through. And as he said himself, you see, we have to be very, very practical and patient. For example, I know a lot of people say that we want to see things happening very rapidly, but sometimes, painfully, you have to and I'll try and see, for example, if you look at what we are doing, the first step is that we are looking at the primary mortgage and then a rental system. And through the REIT system, for example, it's been disrupted to this rent advance system. Okay. The second stage that we want to go is that how do we even get a disciplined approach so that people can save towards home ownership? And then, of course, we will move from that stage to, I think your time is up, so I would thank you.
Sorry, we have to draw the curtain down on this. I think that we'll do a part two of this. Thank you so much, Samson Gliko. He's Acting Director of the Financial Sector Division of the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Farid Anta, I appreciate your time so much, and also Sami Amebo. We might do a part two of this and bring you guys all in again. And also to draw the curtain down here has been PM Express Business Division. I hope you've selected the option now. Maybe it's mortgage, renting, buying or building. Have a great day.